Happy Sunday. Welcome back to Retake the Week. It has actually been a fairly quiet week because, let's be honest, everyone is focusing now on the RMR. I've been recording RMR previews all week. Teams who are actually attending have been boot camping. There's been very little Tier 2 Counter-Strike to talk of. And so it's been a bit of a dead week. We do think we have some interesting topics to bring up, but it's only probably going to be about an hour show. Like, look at the timestamp, like how long this episode lasted. Are we correct? I hope so, because otherwise we have rambled a hell of a lot about things that aren't really that big. But yeah, before we get into the actual show, a shout out to everyone who makes this show possible, my members. Incredibly grateful for the people who have decided to become members, and I hope they appreciate the content that I put up for them. There's quite a lot of it down there. We're talking prospect demo reviews, we're talking interviews, and we're talking the occasional little behind-the-scenes segment. Every Sunday, of course, but I've been trying to figure out ways to get it for other shows. It's just, when you're off the air with people who actually have gossip, they typically don't want you to hit record. So that's all that the members get access to, as well as the right to vote, which I've heard is apparently quite coveted. I don't see what the big deal is. I've done it for a while now, and nothing changes. Quacke, do you have anything to promote for us yet? Any big news for you coming down the pipeline? Or is it all secret, hush, backdoor dealings?
No, it's still pretty secret. Stuff is going on. I think I've more or less I have work in esports secured, which is fun because I do want to stay in the space. And the money's nice on the side of everything. But no, I'm pretty good. It's been a moving week, which is because of this, like why this is happening, because I straight up do not have time. I did think that this move was going to be a bit quicker, but we're now a week and a half into having the keys, and just about yesterday it was a livable space. We have
Very
all
relatable
of
for
the
me.
yeah, we have bed, lights, curtains, and that's about everything you need in the bedroom to not be spied on while you're sleeping. With the apartment a couple of stories up on another building, because it was like we built the bed and we were like, oh nice, now we can probably sleep here, and then we lay down and it's like, yeah, I see like 6 different windows up there, just straight
Dude,
into.
just put on a show. Like, what the hell? You guys are young, you're attractive. Put on a show for the people in the rest of the
Yeah.
buildings. Like, let them see what it looks
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, so I had a trip to IKEA yesterday, which took a full day, more or less. And
Hmm.
then but yeah, everything is just about getting sorted. The setup is not done, but it's oh, actually, yeah, this is something to promo. This is a tiny thing, but the first look on my new setup and the new camera, which I'm gonna have for that, which is gonna be pretty cool, is going to be at EAB Esport, and I don't think there's an S at the end of that. On Twitch on Thursday evening, because I do some casting for them. They are a basically the company league in Sweden, where like different companies can have like their little fun little retreat kind of thing for their employees, where they get to play CS. I do casting for EAB, and they were kind enough to actually sponsor me with a very nice camera, so that's going to be a lot better. Thursday, if you want to see the first look, yeah, that is a tiny promo. I do not expect viewers on that, but if you want to see, then that's something.
Yeah, I might have to pop in just to see what you look like in full HD, because I don't
Mm.
know about what quality this camera is, but I'm hoping this next
Yeah,
one.
I was hoping. I promised the EAB guys I was going to give them a house tour and then stream as well, so that's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely going to tune in. But all right, let's get into our first topic, which is technically something we could have touched on last week, but the grand final happened well after we recorded. And so we decided to leave it for this one. We are going to be, of course, discussing the ThunderPick Finals, which were a pretty big deal, at least in terms of prize money. 770k was the prize pool for this 4-team, like kind of hotel LAN in Berlin. No, it's a real LAN in Berlin. Never mind. I'm just remembering now.
Yeah,
Going through my head. Yeah, real LAN in Berlin. Pretty small event, but like a pretty cool little, like very crammed sort of dark room. I actually thought it looked pretty rad, to be honest. Like someone had
I
converted
thought it looked
like
it
this
looked
very
a,
small
it looked a
space.
little bit like your. It looked a little bit like it could have been a wrestling event or like a boxing event or
Exactly.
something. Yeah,
Yeah, like almost like a cage match. It was
yeah,
pretty sick. And yes, so the
yeah.
4 teams in attendance: Mongols, Heroic, 3D Max, and OG. Mongols end up winning with a 3-1 final over Heroic, which was a bit of a shock to me. Uh, just because, Heroic I thought were on the up, and given the way they just dispatched the teams on the way here, the way they looked at the last big events they played against like real tier 1 opposition, I thought they'd have a really good chance here. But Mongols show us again, their ceiling is so damn high. Like, sure, their floor can sometimes fall out underneath them. They're a very volatile style. Like, it's very individual heavy, like confrontational. But when they're hitting their shots, you see in this game, you've got insane ratings out of Blitz and Senzu, those two riflers making huge plays. And that's pretty hard to deal with when you're heroic. And whilst you do get a good level out of the players you kind of want to see up there, you needed a real superstar Nerds, I think, to face that. And they didn't quite get that in the grand final. A decent level, but not good enough.
Yeah. Big win for Mongols. They have taken land titles before. And I think maybe even other events have had bigger crowds that they've taken home. But anyway, they had a very good event, and I think this is a really nice little upswing for them because I think a lot of people, me included, maybe thought that they had sort of hit their peak, and like at best they were going to stay at this level for another couple of months. But that's another step they've taken, and now they're actually like a team which I would consider putting in the top 10, and that's impressive. Yeah, they got a good level out of 3 of their players. Senzu, obviously, probably the guy you expect to do very well. Blitz, of course, the in-game leader as well. Mzinho did very good.
Yeah, for me, Senzu's a bit of an interesting one because he's kind of like the guy who I expect to be the most volatile. Like, because I've seen him, like, be very inconsistent. But also when he is on, he is one of the most impactful. Like, I expect big numbers out of Blitz. I expect Techno and Mzinho to kind of be like very dangerous role players because they both have incredible mechanics, like raw mechanics. They are phenomenal. And then I expect 910 to be another, like, he's a less extreme version of Senzu. Doesn't peak as high, doesn't trough as low, but does have his ups and downs. And when they hit the ups, typically that's when they win. Like, 910 is a great event, as well as Blitz delivering and the system kind of functioning as they hoped it would. That's when they win events. This event, grand final especially, monster Senzu performance. Considering the way he plays, the roles he has, the spaces he takes up, if he plays like that, you're going to win series, even against a team of the caliber of Heroic. So, yeah, you're talking about putting them into the top 10. I think it now has to be a conversation. I still think they need, like, a playoff appearance at one of those huge events. They're constantly, like, battling in the group stages of the big events. And to be fair, they almost always put on a good show and typically upset at least someone who's officially, like, a favorite against them. But I do think they need just that extra step, Next time when you beat a big dog, you've got to convert the rest of the way. Beat the next teams underneath you, who you're supposed to be evenly matched up with, and finally actually show it. They're very close to it, but for now, I think it's fair to say they are still somehow a little bit on the rise. Like, I'm agreeing with you on the sense that we thought they kind of had plateaued. But this might be a sense that they still have another gear to unlock, especially if they can get consistency out of some of these guys.
Yeah, and $500,000 puts them very high in the amount of prize money they win this week. I'm actually really quick going to put up a little tweet here, which I saw the other day out of the top teams with prize money, which, first of all, it puts them very high in the Valve ranking, which is going to matter quite a lot. They have pretty much invites to all of the first round of the big events in 2025. First one being that Blast bounty thing. They are definitely getting a high seed invite to that thing. They were before as well, but like they're definitely going to be one of the best seeded teams there now, which is cool for them. And probably the rest as well, because they can probably hang around at this pretty high ranking. Yeah, they are 4th in the world in terms of prize money earned in Counter-Strike this year so far. They have earned more prize money than Mao's, Vitality, and FaZe. And yeah, they're lagging about $300,000 behind G2, Spirit, and Navi, who obviously had big, Katowice wins.
I mean, Vitality won Cologne. Let's remember, Vitality have won Cologne, yet have less prize money than the Mongols.
Cologne, Blast World Finals, and Katowice basically goes to those two. And then Navi, they won the Esports World Cup, which was also big which money and a major.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. So obviously, yeah. But yeah, they're doing very good. And this has put them very much up in the Valve ranking as well, which is very good for them.
Yeah.
Just
5th in the world currently. That's crazy.
Yeah, shout out to Nemiga, who are up to 10th in the world in terms of prize money in this week, thanks to the Relog LAN. Um, yeah. Anyway,
And a lot of tier
not the
2
point.
cups. Yeah, a lot of tier 2 cups for
Yeah.
them as well. But yeah, the
Yeah.
rest of the teams are here. Like, I think Heroic is still going to see this as a sort of good tune-up event. Obviously, their focus, everyone's focus, especially teams who have, pretty big name rosters or big histories and hopefully for themselves big futures. The RMR is where it's going to really matter. So for them, sure, they'd have liked to have won this, but I think for them a focus really has to be on getting into RMRB, an RMR which is incredibly winnable, but I think as a fair few teams that can trip you up and winning it out there. I think Heroic have to be looking at this coming up major to really relaunch this roster, because it took a while to rebuild and start looking cohesive. It took them a while to start getting those wins and climbing up and getting a playoff appearance here or there at really big events. I think for them, if they can get a top 8 at this major, I think they can say, okay, we've survived this horrific rebuild we had to go through. We actually have a real elite Counter-Strike team again. Now we can start, trying to pluck out one player, put another player in. Maybe we can start now scouting for another replacement somewhere if we need it. If we feel like there's an extra gear we can find out of Nerds, maybe we need a different IGL. Just a suggestion. I'm not saying they should. Just saying you can start fine-tuning once you have this team locked back into those sorts of elite spots. So I think for them this is a fine result. Bit disappointing not to have actually performed in the final, but bring on the RMR. I think for them that's going to be huge.
I do like the fact that Heroic have given a lot of time to this team. Dexter obviously being the one replacement they've made, which was needed.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do like that. As for the other teams, I think 3D Max would be very happy to have won their bronze match, but OG probably could have used that win. They probably would have been good for them to get that. They actually played fairly close against Heroic.
OG are a bit of a weird one, aren't they? Right
yeah.
now.
Yeah. And I have no idea if they're running with Mikey or if they're running with Spook. It seems to depend on who you're asking. Because it was not too long ago that Draken said it was going to be Spook. Now I think they have settled on not Spook. They might go for Mikey instead. I think Spook absolutely has other offers just on that sort of vein. But yeah, I assume they've sort of settled on Mikey being on this team. I don't know. But I think I would have I could have definitely seen a third place finish here for OG. Which could have been, I don't know. It's 3D Max as well. Sort of fighting for their, I could have seen 3D Max do anything from being in the final to going out last in this event. So it was interesting to
Yeah.
see this specific group of teams.
I could have seen 3D Max winning the event. That's the thing. 3D Max are
Yeah.
their level. I talked about this on one of the RMR previews. Members will have seen, and not everyone else has though. There are some weird quirks with 3D Max where you're like, any given event where it's just teams who are maybe 8th and below, they can just go and win it. But then they can also just lose series to almost anyone. They are crazy inconsistent as an overall squad, but they're always all along for the ride at this point. It really feels like they will smash you as a team, or you will be able to walk over them as a team a lot of the time. And it makes for some very angry French noises coming out of people, I think. You're watching them, you get flashbacks to all these historic French teams, the rugby teams of years and years who could randomly show up and give the All Blacks, the all-dominant, all-winning All Blacks, the most thrilling game of the century. But then the next week, lose to Italy, and you're like, how are you so bad for my health? But yeah, it's the same thing again, the same story. Crazy inconsistent, full French. Love it.
Yeah. All right. Sweet.
Yeah, no, the OG stuff I think is going to be interesting in terms of who they end up with. I'm glad they've settled on. Are you on a different topic or?
No.
Okay.
No.
She seemed shocked for a second. I was like, I'm just making sure we're still on the same page.
Yeah,
they seem settled at least with Krisen as their IGL. Buzz looking fairly good on the aggressive side of the game. He's looked pretty solid for them. I think they've got their lineup. I'm still not sold on Modo, and I think Fiku, I'm like, I want you to work. I know you could, but until you string it together, it's not going to be very convincing. So I'm also glad OG look like they've settled at least the majority of their core. And that's going to be at least positive going forward, that they have managed to rescue something on this super budget operation they've gone down.
Yeah. I am. Not sold on Modo being the Zaiwu-esque opera some French people might have penned him as.
Modo, French people?
Extas picked him out, and I
He
don't know if he
did?
said it. Yes, for the TSM
Oh,
team.
wow. Oh, yeah, he
Picked him
picked him for
out of,
TSM. Yeah. Wow, yeah.
yeah. And I don't remember if he said explicitly that this was like, oh, this guy's really talented, he's going to be something big, or if it was just something people inferred because he talked him up in other interviews. But yeah.
Right.
I remember that was something we talked about. Like, it would be strange of Extas to pick Modo over so many other candidates if he didn't see something special, or he is just dumb.
Or
Um,
he had
so
no budget and Modo was free. Because honestly, I don't see why
even
else you
then,
sign Modo.
even then, you had free options who would have been so much better for that TSM team. Like, it was not hard to find better options that were free, unless they just said no. But I just don't know. I'm not sold on him being that good. I'm not even sold on him
Mm,
being like good enough to hang in big events. I'm not even entirely sold on that, but I think he's definitely shown that he's good enough for being here. Um, like, he is not a big liability for OG. He's not a big problem in the events where they end up losing. He's not even a great contributing factor in the events they win, I don't think, but he's fine. And yeah, we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, it's an interesting team OG have made, and it feels like they're just on the edge where this could either be a team which ends up fairly soon launching into like good space, like top 20, top maybe even like top 15, contending big events. It feels like they're just on the edge where they could just launch into that, or this could be the final team before OG disband and leave Counter-Strike forever. I don't know which one it is, but it feels like they're just on the edge of that, and it could go either way. But yeah,
yeah,
there's it's interesting that they've picked this kind of bunch of players, and I guess it was cool for them to get LAN experience.
it was. That's very helpful. They're a very young team. Prison being their IGL, he's still like
Hmm.
12, isn't he? He's incredibly
Yeah.
young. 18 now. I think he was 17 when they actually signed him from
Yep.
Mouse NXT. As they've taken some risks on essentially a lot of like academy castaways and players who had kind of opportunities, but they're not really, who weren't put in favourable spots, and they've given them a shot. And credit to them. I liked the Crizzen signing. I thought that was a good risk. That has paid off dividends. I understand your reservations about Modo, but I think they've done a good enough job making themselves not a laughing stock, and
Yep.
that's I think admirable considering they didn't exactly go into this sort of rebuild with a shit ton of money to throw around.
Yeah.
They just kind of had to manage it, and they've done pretty well. So yeah, that kind of wraps up, I think, ThunderPick for now. Big event for Mongols to win, catapults them up to 5th in the Valve rankings. Feels incredibly silly, but whatever. We've had that discussion before about the Valve rankings factoring prize money. Still think it shouldn't. Such a dumb idea. But here we are. Let's move on to the small site retake. Quacke, lead us off. What have you decided to talk about? Please, 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 please. Is it, by any chance, that one small Swedish event that happened this week?
It is not small. It's actually a pretty big event. Yeah, it is. It is. It happened this weekend, and it was actually pretty cool. It's always pretty cool. I do wish I could have been there, but it's honestly just too much with the move, and especially having shelled out so much money in furniture in these past couple of days and weeks. I can't really motivate a trip to Stockholm at the moment. So yeah, but it's a cool event. It's a really cool event. It is a $50,000 event, finishing up with a LAN final in Stockholm. The best teams in Sweden get invited. This includes NIP and all of your usual suspects. This is basically our major at this point, where all of the Swedish teams basically work towards this one event. And there's been an online competition, which was also exciting, to be honest. We had some interesting teams here. A couple of mixed teams, of course, who made it through quite far. Couple of dropouts. Godsent didn't even make the online stage. They dropped out in the qualifier. Lil Mix as well dropped out in the online stage. A couple of surprises came through. I think nobody expected Venom, the half Bulgarian mix, to make it as far as they did. Anyway, that's in the past. Today finished, or this weekend was the LAN component of it all, finished yesterday. And yeah, I'm just going to go through this real quick from the bottom up. So we had in the quarterfinal, we had Alliance versus Eyeballers, which is an interesting derby, actually, because it's probably the two orgs who are most connected to Sweden in a sense. Like it's the two orgs who definitely have big fan bases who get quite vocal. Um, and it's also sort of a bit of a watershed game. I think it would have been for both teams, where it's like we kind of want to prove ourselves here because we've had some big struggles. We're probably underperforming the caliber of our players. Would be nice to win this game. Alliance end up winning. Not in particularly dominant fashion. It's a 2-1 win with overtime and one win on one map. Medisport go up against Kappa Bar. Kappa Bar is effectively a mixed team. I think they've been practicing a little bit, but it's Era, Robin, and then a couple of guys you guys probably haven't heard of. Actually take a map of a Medisport, but they end up
Yeah, that
losing
was
2-1.
surprising. Like when I looked at the results, I'm like, Kappa Bar. Firstly, most of these players on Kappa Bar, who the fuck are you? As you quite correctly pointed out,
Mm.
never heard of them. But the fact that they take that opening map of Dust 2, and I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
strange, but fair enough.
Something I'm gonna shout out. These guys are decent. Like Viri and Sis have been like they've been around, and a lot of people are calling them very important. I think Robin even said like that. Like Sis is by far the most important player on this team. I think he said ahead of the Swedish Cup because it's just he's just really cracked. They didn't really show it here, but yeah. Anyway, moving on into semifinal, this is where NIP and Johnny Speeds were invited straight up. NIP go up against Alliance. It's actually fairly close, which I think is to Alliance's credit. It's not overtime close. It's a 2-0 win, but it's it sort of places both NIP and the Swedish teams at a level where you can sort of count on them in a sense, where the gap might not be huge. But yeah, and then Johnny Speeds, they absolutely get blown out by Medisport, which is honestly, I think a lot of people wouldn't have expected that, but that's an interesting semifinal, and they end up heading into the best of 5 final versus NIP, which is great because we have 3 ex-NIP players up against NIP. Some former teammates. No, actually, no. Never mind. No, nobody here has ever played with any of the NIP guys.
Yeah, bit of a difference in the
Uh,
time in the academy, I think. Just a little, not
yeah.
not much overlap. Yeah,
Still a big game. I think they've only played each other once before, and that was online, and Medisport won 2-0. But I did think, like, okay, we're heading into LAN, they've had some prep. I know it's Yocab instead of Maxter, but, like, let's see what happens. And they just end up fucking blowing them up 3-0, and Medisport are the champions of Sweden. And, like, this is a big deal. There's a fairly big crowd. Literally every single industry person in Swedish esports, except for me, was there. So it's like it's a pretty cool thing to be here. Like I can especially imagine that also adds a little bit of pressure because like every single person you have ever worked with or will ever work with is in this room watching you play right now. So but yeah, it's been it was really cool, and yeah, they end up playing really well. Nilo, Adam B, and Plopsky basically secure the event. And that's cool as well, I think, because I think maybe this is not particularly articulated, but I think Nilo has had a slight bit of an issue where he slightly drops off in the big moments. And especially having missed out on Get Rio, where they definitely could have had a good performance. They very nearly did with very close maps. Nilo missed out on that. Now they step into this LAN event and they absolutely sweep it and they do really well. And honestly, I'm kind of high on Metasport again. And I think a lot of people would be after this event. Um, so yeah, I think definitely a strong, you know,
mm.
a very strong event for Metasport and a very important event for Metasport heading into the next year.
Yeah,
Since I think this basically caps off their year. This is the like I said, this is basically our major. Only NIP are in RMR contention, so they're probably flying off to China right now. There's no like this was the big thing for Metasport Alliance eyeballers.
yeah,
We basically head into winter now, and Johnny Speeds are gonna do whatever the fuck they're gonna do. Draken said, I don't know if we're gonna be a team after the Swedish Cup. I I don't know. I don't know what I think about that. I'm not sure. I hope they do, or I'm not sure if they, yeah, Hampus's loan is definitely ending now. He was loaned until the end of the Swedish
right.
Cup, and I'm not sure what's gonna happen there. It's basically been just a very nice capping off to our season, and I'm kind of sad I wasn't there, but I am definitely going to be there next year. Um, so yeah, hats off
Right.
to all the guys at Fragbite who made this work because it is their event and it looked amazing. So yeah, hats off.
Yeah, for me, as someone who has to sort of follow Metasport because reluctantly they have a lot of really good talents that are kind of stuck being Swedish at this point. Uh, just because there doesn't seem to be a good Swedish team being assembled, like a truly good one. Like, as much as I want to be excited for Metasport going to next year, I still think they're just a bit of a funky mix of like how they're assembled. Like, I'm just still not sold on Lumen. I still Shine, for me, whilst he had okay stats at this event, I generally find him to be incredibly weak as a fragger. And whilst, yes, he's the IGL, I do think the meta is leaning, and will lean even more heavily in the coming year or two, towards IGLs who can actually hold their own, just because of how little time you have to make up for, failing to hold a bomb site, missing that opening kill, not getting that key trade. It's actually quite important that you don't have a vulnerability that can be exploited. So I think, for me, I still have my concerns. But one thing I have to say is, of course, Nilo, Adam B, even Plopsky, still the truth. They still are a rifle trio that you should be able to build something off of. Potentially swapping one out for a more supportive player might be another thing to look at in the future. Because, that's kind of why y'all got rid of Susp. Like, I thought that was part of the restructuring. Instead, you brought in another guy who kind of plays star roles, so whatever. But I do think there's a lot of potential in those three. Keeping them on the same team might be interesting as well going forward. And hopefully someone gets it right. Hopefully someone gets it right, looks at this event and goes, aha, I can pluck this player out, mix it with these guys, and make something actually in contention for the best teams in the world. Because I think they have that talent on Metasport. I genuinely think they have the talent for a real tier 1 push. They just don't have the right roster assembled just yet. So pretty cool event in terms of just seeing them play on LAN again. Still not sold on the whole roster, but that's fine. Yeah, a good small site. And now my small site is going to be a little self-indulgent. I'm going to be talking about, because it's popped up recently in the HLTV newsfeed, so it came back to mind, a little bit of a history lesson. So Korean Counter-Strike is a bit of a weird one. We now have Zine playing in the Asia RMR on the team Alter Ego, which is a mishmash of nationalities. It's literally 5 players, all from different countries. And there's some significant names in there. Zine being one of them, but also Buntet, obviously everyone remembers him, Dobu, Freeman from Hong Kong, and 8kit from now North Macedonia. So a bit of an odd bunch, but a team who, yes, are not favourites at this RMR. I did pick them on the double swing, but who at least have a shot, just an outside shot in terms of the talent there and the chaos potentially involved in BO1s. They could make it through. So I just want to talk about briefly the history of Korean Counter-Strike, because in CSGO, we had MVP PK. And the duo on there, the core duo that a lot of people will remember, is Solo and Zine. Zine being, at that point, a fairly young, kind of up-and-coming fragger. If you look at him in from 2015 to 2017, he's in his sort of late teens to early 20s. He's a big-time fragger for them. They mostly play in Asian events, but occasionally they do get to make it to LANs with European teams and all that good stuff. And he still puts up some solid numbers. But the core of the history of Korean Counter-Strike, and why I really wanted to make somehow a miracle comeback, against all odds, is you have to go back to 1.6 and Solo's team, Eastro, and then We Made Fox, who actually made huge runs at big events. I'm not talking about, they did a Mongols, they upset someone in the group, couldn't really make it out the group, at a major or something. No, at big events, at majors, they made top 4. They made grand finals. They had wins over some of the best teams in the world during these runs. And that level of Asian CS has never been replicated. Mongols haven't even reached that sort of pinnacle yet. You can argue that the scene is deeper and more difficult now, and whilst that's correct, these guys beat the Fanatics, the Pentagrams, whatever the Polish core were playing under, because they played under so many different names across their tenured history of major winning in 1.6. They were legit sort of in amongst the top 5 to top 6 teams in the world for a good 2 to 3 years. So I've documented that history in a video a long time ago, almost 4 years ago now. So excuse the quality of the video, the quality of the person, all that stuff. It's a bit messy, but I think it's a really interesting story, and one that everyone should at least look into if you're into Asian CS.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, I like these sort of low level regional stuff, especially from what some would call like weirder backgrounds. And especially like South Korea being kind of interesting in that sense, where they have been, it probably is maybe the biggest downfall, like out of all, in terms of going from, as you say, having teams in contention for being some of the world's best, a decade and a half ago, to non-existent in 2024. There's one guy. There's one
Yeah.
motherfucker still doing this. Nobody else is playing
Oh,
CS in
it's
all
like
of
I'm
South
sorry,
Korea.
that just reminded me. There's one guy. It's like
Yeah.
there's this, I read an article called like the one Jew in Afghanistan or something. Like that just popped into my head as you said it.
Yeah. It's just the one guy.
just
It's just the
just
one guy
one
now.
bro.
So
Like
yeah. That's something like, if he's gonna, if Zion is going to carry the South Korean recovery of the back of, like, of the back of himself, that's gonna be one of the greatest recoveries in Counter-Strike history, regionally, so to speak. But yeah, that makes it very interesting. And especially like the story you're telling about, like, oh, that past, that's probably something which is very, like, it's probably very much in Zion. The few South Korean fans who still exist and watch CS, probably, I don't know how few they are. Maybe they have a huge fan base and just no players. But um, the people who do watch, they probably have that behind them. Like, yeah, um, it's really interesting. It is really interesting to look into these sort of stories.
yeah, no, it's surprising. You know, if you because when I was starting out, I did do a fair bit of like I tried to find interesting historical topics to talk about, and I remember
Mm.
stumbling whilst going through some of the old majors from 1.6 into this Korean team. Like we made Fox initially, Eastro as they were called before then. When you go further back, and you see like them winning straight up events that are considered S tier. Like there's a World Esports Masters I didn't realize was an S tier event by Liquipedia standards. They won that, and in the process beat Frag Executors, which is the Golden Five. They beat SK Gaming, which was Face Wallet, Delpan, like some 1.6 names. But then in other events, even beat the Fnatic of, Get Right, Forest, Khan, DSN, Gux, like that all-time Swedish roster that broke the record for prize earnings in a year. At least at one point. I'm not sure if Get Right was a part of that or not, but at least they went on to win more majors and be an insanely dominant team. That's the level they reached. Like that's an insane uh, pinnacle from a region that even back then wasn't that big in Counter. There's not like a great depth of Korean teams. It's just this one team that went so far.
Yeah.
I think it should serve as inspiration to all from like tiny regions. Like, yo, if y'all are actually good enough and put in the work, these motherfuckers did it. They straight up did it
Yeah.
with very limited opportunities. So it's awesome.
Hell yeah.
Right. We have a big event, I guess, coming up. Big event in terms of the number of teams attending. I'm not sure that's going to be the biggest event for everyone to actually like watch, but the prize pool is solid for both the men's and women's divisions. 160k in the women's, 240k in the men's, for a total of 400,000 distributed across both sort of sections. Let's start with the women's though. This is IESF World Esports Championship 2024. It's in Riyadh. It's about to be happening in the coming week, and I thought I'm not going to double swing this event because it's firstly not that big, and secondly, I have enough to do. So I thought we'd do a brief preview, talk about the teams we like the look of in the women's and men's sections, and we'll start with the women's because I think not a lot of people are going to know a lot of these players. I mean, hell, when you go deeper into this, like if you look at Team Argentina, I don't know the majority of these players. In fact, I can confidently say any of them. Uh, I don't really know any of them. I don't follow enough of that scene. But there are certainly some very strong teams in attendance. And I thought we'd take it in turns. I'll let you lead off. Just pick a team you like the look of, talk them up, just so people understand like who they are, because they don't get a lot of press.
So there's the obvious one, which I think has a good shot. We are in an interesting position here because I think both of us have teams that we can really cheer for obvious reasons, who are actually like contenders for the win,
Yeah.
and that's quite interesting. Not very often that happens. But yeah, um, I think the obvious one I have to mention is Sweden, of course. I think we have a very strong lineup. I think we have very strong players. I think we had a very strong run through the qualifier. As I recall, we didn't end up finishing 5-6. Yeah, we did take one loss to Poland, but then we basically sweeped everything else, as I recall. Oh, that might have been the qualifier before that, even. I can't even remember. There were so many games, and I watched a bunch of them. We played good. Anyway, we end up here, and I think we have a good shot at the win. I think we definitely have a lot to make up for last year when they had very few European spots last year. I think, yeah, they basically had, since the host country was there, and that was Romania, and then they also had Poland as the previous year's champions, they only added one other European spot, and
Right.
we lost out in the final of the European qualifier to the Netherlands, who ended up taking that instead, and also ended up winning. Like,
Yeah, they end up being
yeah,
really good. Yeah.
weird setup, but now we have a bunch more. We have 8 European teams in attendance, and that's a much better selection. I do think we have a good shot at the win with Sweden, but some other teams I think are strong. I think Poland shouldn't be discounted because this is the old Navi Javelins, who were still a very, very, very strong team.
Well, they were in contention for best team in the world without
Yes.
having made the changes they've made now. And what's fascinating about that is it feels weird if you're Navi Javelins, like coming back together, because you look at the field and like historically the team you lose to cannot be here because they are a
Yeah.
mishmash of nationalities. So this is being a very nation, it's a nations cup essentially, a World Cup. You guys are now on paper the favorites, but I'm gonna just jump straight in with the team I want to talk about.
Go
Team
ahead.
France are my pick because of my heart and my brain. Like they're both involved, and they're both screaming for Team France. Now, the roster isn't exactly star-studded in terms of big names you'll have heard of. Because obviously, when you look at Team Sweden, Giuliano Zaz, everyone remembers them. Everyone remembers them for like
It's the
2016,
goats.
but everyone remembers them, and they're still solid players now. I don't think they're anywhere near as good as they used to be. They're still very good. But Team France, so I'll go through the roster, but then I'll tell you my highlights. So it's Julie, Astra, Kaude, Emerald, and Rachel. And she's the star of the show. Uh, a very aggressive player who was on Let Her Cook when they made their run to the grand final of the last women's Impact Finals, whatever you want to call it. I forget. The ESL Impact Finals, there we go. Some reason blanked. And she was insanely dominant in that run. But then also with Team France, when they qualified for this event, they actually came through the lower bracket. They were in the upper bracket, beat Serbia, lost a game to Spain, like a BO3 to Spain, which I thought was a bit of a surprise, but they're not a terrible team by any means. And then through the lower bracket, beat Denmark, beat Portugal, revenge win against Spain, and in the grand final, were able to beat Poland. I think absolutely huge, a ridiculous performance, and a team with a lot of underrated players. Astra currently plays in Navi Javelins. I thought she'd come in as a far more supportive element. She's been one of their best players in this latest season of Impact. Kaude for FlyQuest Red. Now, they are always a hard team to judge as a group of individuals just because they do play in a region that's weak and they are so dominant, like in the Americas. But I do see her as another solid addition. Emerald on the AWP is a player we kind of remember from almost pre-Impact, being like
Yeah.
a surprisingly solid AWPer who never managed to find the right team, I guess, to make a lot like a serious impact in Impact. Like she's not played that many seasons of it, I don't think, but is actually a very good player and one who deserves a lot more attention. And hopefully, if Team France goes deep as I think they will, she'll get that recognition. And hopefully, we'll see her in the Impact League because this is a roster that can definitely do it. So hopefully, she can get that attention. Julie, just to round it off, is a very veteran presence. She's been around since 2015. Currently plays on Permitter's female roster. But yeah, has been around in the French women's scene forever. TeamLDLC.com female, just to show you where it starts. Like, we're talking old school. Yeah, she's the veteran. She'd, I guess, in my head, be the captain and like sort of the leader of these players. I do think they have a genuine chance to go deep, despite not having the flashiest names or an history as an org together to really impress a lot of people. I think they are dangerous, though.
Yeah. Just as I think the final is going to come down to either France, Poland, Sweden, some combination of those three. I think those three are sort of a
Mm.
leg up on the rest of them.
Yeah,
Um,
Poland.
just
Oh,
on,
if Poland don't make the final, it's an abject failure. I think. Like
yeah,
that's a
it's going
what
to
a
depend on the
team.
bracket as well. But like,
Sure, but
I
what a
do
team.
think I do think at some point we're going to see these three teams face each other, and that's basically going to be the real playoff, so to speak.
We're
Because I think
almost
these are,
guaranteed to see France, Sweden. They're in the same group. They're both in
oh
Group
yeah,
B. So that's going to
yep,
be in a group stage already. We'll see them play each other.
yeah. Poland also have a decently free group. They are not free, but they should probably make
Pretty free.
yeah. They should probably make like the winners bracket, so they probably have a good
Mm.
yeah, it's a decent chance we see something like Poland, Sweden in the quarterfinal or something. But anyway, um just to talk about some of the other teams. Netherlands, last year's champions. I don't think they're going to do
Mm.
well right now because last year, while Missy and Manishin are very good, they were also very much had help by Naomi and Kiara, the two NIP twins, who are amazing, and they are not here right now. They have two
Mm.
relatively unknown players instead. So just to briefly touch on them. Two like if I'm gonna pick like three dark horse teams, I would probably say like Portugal, um, Australia, and maybe Denmark, just because I know they have very talented players. Like Portugal has D7, Ada, and Zana, who are all three of them very competent. They have two more players
Yep.
I don't know very much about. Denmark, they have Marie and Ismo, and I can't really discount them. Like I sort of have to put them here because like they are very cracked players, and like I think they're just waiting for that sort of breakout moment. It could be this event, could be any other event. I don't know. Australia, Bibian, always in a conversation. I think
Enough
one
said.
of the best players in the world. Yeah, enough said. I think you could make a case for USA or Canada. They have some half decent players
Yeah,
as
I was
well.
going to try and make a case for Canada, to be honest, because
Yeah,
there's enough pieces in that team that I'm like, you know what, they're actually kind of decent. They're kind of dangerous. Like Goose
yeah,
Breeder, fragging IGL, a monster. Rain has always been solid. I think Jesscas is like a. I remember her from like the early days. Who was she with? Please Send Help. That's who it was. They had a funny name, and I thought she was a very solid like piece on that team. And I was like,
hmm,
you know what, this Canada team, when I look at it, put it all together, they're not crazy exciting, but they definitely fill that dark horse void. And I think also we have to just quickly shout out the Argentinian roster, not because I think they're going to win, but last time they made the final. And I'm looking at these rosters. Yeah, it's a very similar group of players. Some changes, it seems,
hmm.
between the team that made the grand final and this team here. But basically the core is the same. So they are going to be surprisingly dangerous, which is weird considering we don't really think of the Argentinians in Counter-Strike that often. And even the women's space, we haven't seen an Argentinian team make a run, but they are on impact squads and they have been able to qualify again. So yeah, maybe Argentina are better than everyone gives them credit for.
Yeah. They did beat Australia last year as well in the group stage to make it into the playoffs. Australia also another playoff team, and then in the actual playoffs they also end up besting United States twice to
Yeah.
knock them out. And that's yeah, also very decently similar team to what it is right now, coached by Munster that year as well. So shout out to Munster. He's probably
Mm.
watching. Hi Munster. uh, yeah, yeah. There's a few like I think we could maybe get like the CIS random teenage player coming through in like Kazakhstan. I don't know who any of these people are.
Yeah, never heard of any of
Maybe
these
they show up and be
players.
decent. Potya was on one win. That's the only one I
Yeah,
recognize. But Lana Banana is also an all-time best nickname. Uh,
that's great.
so yeah. Also a South African player named I Hate Jess. So I hope they play Canada. Uh,
That would be fun if they shared a group. Do they share a group?
no, they do not.
No.
But
Oh.
through some miracle, I want South Africa to go through that group now.
Yeah, I've got a bad feeling
Um,
about South Africa's chances to make playoffs, but that would be an
who
incredible
knows?
storyline. And yeah, no,
Yeah,
if you look at this, like if you had to try to make a power ranking, obviously you'd have like Poland probably sitting at top just because of how much history they have, who they are. Then
yeah,
probably France, Sweden. But then after that, there's not that many teams who I consider straight up bad here. Like I think
mm,
Hong Kong, I offhandedly would have to ignore Kazakhstan, Iran, and South Africa. But the rest of them all have pieces that, have impressed me and can still impress me, or at least have played a lot of good Counter Strike as groups. Like Team Norway,
yeah.
whilst there's no stars to me, like Aurora's played solid top female CS for so long. And Denmark, again, no
Yeah,
one particularly impresses me, but there's 3 Astralis players. Like, they've got that history together. And other people seem to believe in them. So, no, this is a very stacked event for a women's event. Usually we have
yeah,
to sort of like call it before it's over, you know? But
yeah.
this one definitely is going to be a banger. I'm going to try to follow it. Hopefully, the group stage is actually on HLTV and we can follow along because this should be, yeah, a real brawl, a royal rumble of women's
Yeah.
CS with some national pride to go with it.
I'm gonna say one thing just before we end this. We are about to move on to the men's team, and there's something we are gonna mention is having the chemistry of having an existing team and working with like putting an existing team through as your national team, so to speak. It's basically what Poland have done. But the only other team who have really done that, as far as I know, looking through this team list, is Spain, who have been together for quite a while. They haven't done too much. They've been in a couple of qualifiers here and there, a couple of like traded leagues and stuff with an orgless team named Yume, I believe. Um, Basically for the past 6 months or so, 5 or 6 months. And I'm just gonna say, if like we are gonna touch on that a lot in the men's team, the only team I've done that here is them. They should make it to the playoffs, looking at the group, in my opinion. So maybe a dark
Yeah,
horse
there's
for
a
like
chance. There's a chance. Yeah.
maybe a dark horse. That's just the final one I wanted to mention.
Yeah, I mean they played very well in the qualifier. Like they eliminated France in the BO3s in the upper bracket. Like didn't eliminate them overall, but
Yeah.
they beat them in the upper bracket semi. Like that's crazy. They took this Poland roster all 24. Like, they have a lot of punch. They also beat
Mm,
Portugal in the upper bracket quarterfinals. Like yeah, damn, there's some scalps in their collection. Like not a team to
yeah.
be messed around with. I think yeah, that's a good pick. But all right,
Mm.
it's time to talk about obviously the most terrible people in the world, men. Everyone knows they're evil,
Hello.
awful, and you know everything else. I don't care. But anyway, the men's side is going to be well. Most of you are going to recognize the big names. You're going to start recognizing some of these players. And I think we have to start with before we talk about anyone else. Let's just get it out of here. Just mention it outright. Yes, Sweden are the heavy favourite because it's just Metisport. They have
Yep.
sent the entirety of Metisport here, and I'm going to be honest, there's no other roster that I think is going to be, on paper, as threatening as them. They've got the full roster, no substitutes, even the coach is here. And whilst other teams have done such, like Germany have got alternate attacks, Portugal have Rhino, Ukraine have what they called now, Kono. There's sometimes Kono, sometimes ECF, depends on what they're allowed to.
I think it's both.
Romania,
I think the sponsor and HLTV don't allow sponsors in
right.
the team
So
name.
it's Kono ECF. Romania have sent Nexus. Australia have sent Mind Freak. Mongolia have sent the Huns. Where's the last one? Yeah. South Africa have sent Kitsune Esports, who are a team. These teams are all united, but none of them are as cracked and as stacked with young talent as Metasport. So yes, congratulations, Sweden. Just little clap, clap, clap.
Yeah.
You guys have sent the best roster on paper.
Back to back.
Don't choke.
Yeah, back to back world champions. Here we go. Um, three out of the 6 members on this team as well, including Abdi. Then also won last year. Adam B and Plopsky. So yeah, we should be champions. Yeah, nobody else has sent a team anywhere near the caliber of this. Like even last year, at the very least, Germany basically sent big. They sent like Faben was there. It was like the big academy, and then they had Faben, hyped QB, and it's like ooh, solid core. Um,
Yeah.
but they lose in the final to us, and
Yeah, I
like
mean,
yeah,
last year was
I don't think
crazy.
this. Yeah, but I don't think there's a single team this year who have done the same. I think we have more or less. I think I'm not gonna say we have this in the bag because that's just a jinx, but I think that's sort of where we are. I think we are gonna do very well in this event, and yeah, there's not much more to say about it.
Yeah, heavy favourites. And I mean, the story of
Mm.
last time, I remember we ended up talking about this team a lot, was Traffic Tashkent representing Uzbekistan with Icy Vilone. ICVL1, ICVL1, I don't know how it's supposed to be pronounced, as their star player, like swept their group 5-0, then beat Hungary and ended up going out to Germany 16-12, 16-12. But that was one of the most fun storylines from the last event, is seeing them come crashing through, you know,
Yeah.
completely upsetting everyone. Like, firstly, to make it through from the Asia qualifiers, but then also just actually arriving at the event and being legit. That was terrifying. But let's talk about teams that are here. Do you have any picks for, like, I guess dark horses, but just teams that are maybe underrated, that are mishmashed, like that aren't just a full roster?
Oh, mishmashed underrated teams. I think Turkey could be half decent. I don't know. I recognize M Star, of course, and Emor. Emor
Mm-hmm.
is always correct. There's another chosen few player here, and then a bunch more I don't really know about. I think Norway could be decent. I think
Yeah, I liked
basically
the look of it. Yeah,
everybody, yeah, everybody here except for Shine is well very. I don't. I think Shine as well, but like very well regarded. Um, for Norway. It's this is some of the best players in Norway aside from Jacob and Rain, I suppose, and Halsuk. So I think we have that's going to be a half decent team as well. I could see Hungary doing something, um, just off of like Aaron, Corey, Coolio are decent players, but yeah, I don't think any of them have a huge shot at like doing something great here. I think we have how many teams are there? Is this 24 teams? Yikes.
yeah, it's
And
a
that's gonna
big
be a
one.
round yeah, and it's gonna be a round robin group by the looks of it. So and then we end up in a yeah, 8-team playoffs. So we do actually have quite a tough group. I don't see any of them doing it particularly well. I think every group has like teams that definitely should make it through like the round robin sort of group stage. It's hard to make an upset here with that, especially if you're a mixed team. So yeah, I'm not gonna put any of them solidly through, but yeah, half decent. In terms of like proper dark horses, we have many more teams here who are just teams where they've slapped on a different tag. Um, just going top to bottom, it's like it's Medisport, it is alternate attacks, barely. I think they like just shut down their like their CS division, but they're here. Rhino is here, the Portuguese team. Kono, of course, I think are the second best, definitely contenders for being the champions. Nexus, I'm actually quite bullish on Nexus because I think on their day they can really show up. I don't think they should be underrated here, but yeah, they're here. Permita as well, basically center full team with just a different upper. Partisan, we have some Argentinian team I haven't heard of. Team Canada is 3 out of 5 Homino, who have been around for a while.
Yeah,
The Huns, of course. Mind Freak with those guys
Gump.
who actually did something. Yeah, they did something recently. I think it was like qualify for ESL Pro League or something like that.
What a
Even
fucking
even
name.
even even like as much as we don't count them, Tunisia have sent basically a full team, and South Africa have. So
Yeah,
yeah,
they have tried. But look, a team I want to
yeah,
highlight that I think actually is going to be very fucking good is Kosovo.
mm, mm,
I think
yeah,
they might sneak under the roster, under the radar. But at
yeah,
the Western European qualifier, they were, or the European qualifier, whatever it was, they were insanely good. They actually made it all the way to the final. I don't know if they won the final. Yeah, they did. They crushed Czech in the BO1 final. But along the way, they took down Latvia, they took down Portugal, and they even beat Germany in a BO1. Like, they were a legit team in the groups as well. They went 3-2, took some scalps there. Sure, their group had Ireland and Wales, so it wasn't that fucking hard. But uh,
mm,
they've at least had some impressive wins, and they have some players I rate. Mostly just Dementor. Like, I think he's a very good player uh, in these sorts of arenas. You know, he's not obviously tier one talent. I don't think. I don't think he's got that sort of top end. But in this sort of event, with a lot of rosters being incomplete and not overly stacked, I think this is a threatening group of players with some young, unheard of like sort of players who have a lot to show. Yeah, for me, they are a dark horse, and Norway are a dark horse just because when Norway play with this sort of roster, Sly is the star player, and when his Sly is your star player, he can put up crazy numbers and he can dominate opposition. Just I think a lot of his rosters he's played in have been subpar, like since leaving the Was it Apex Academy or was it the other one that he was in? It was Triple
He
Seven.
was
He
in
was
Apex
in,
Academy, yeah, but then
and
he
then
was
he
in
was
Triple
in.
Seven, yeah.
Yeah, Triple Sevens with as a team he did some damage with, but then a lot of the rosters he went to end up not working out. But he is himself a bit of a monster, and I think they are the right combo to really set him up. They managed to do it well enough to get them to this event. He was their top fragger in every series. I think Norway and Kosovo have to be considered very scary dark horses for everyone else in attendance.
Yeah, for sure. Tapover as well, very competent, and Gross, a bit of a veteran at this point.
He is, yeah.
Bounced around all of those Norwegian teams. Sense as well. We haven't seen a huge amount of him. We've seen him in Copenhagen Wolves, but then he sort of fell out of that as well.
Yeah, it does feel like we got a
Also,
lot of like sort of IGL tier fraggers on that team, but
yeah, but let's see what happens. Like in this crowd, that might be fine. Like
just playing smart
some of the
CS, good
teams,
CS might be enough, right?
yeah, that actually it's a fairly stacked group, the A group there, because we have Sweden who should go through. Then we have Turkey who have a
Oh yeah, that's
strong
rough.
roster partially. We have Poland who sent Permita, half decent, like
Yeah, that's good.
eternal number 70 ranked team in the world.
Tomoko's a
Um,
beast. Like, yeah.
yeah, friend as well, decent. Norway, strong. Canada, I think honestly, in this crowd, Canada should go last, but like this is also like Joel's is pretty good. Like I'm gonna I like yeah, should go last. And then Australia, who like I said, I do think they did qualify for ESL Pro League, didn't they? Wasn't
I
that
don't
like the whole reason why we started talking about Gum?
know. Don't talk
Yeah,
about
they did.
Gump because I started talking about Gump for different reasons, but
Mind Freak with Ricky, Tux, Texta, Gump, and Payne qualified for ESL Pro League by either winning or coming second or maybe even third in the Oceanic
second.
Challenger
They
League. Yeah,
finished second in Oceania. Yeah.
yeah.
I
Well,
was
they would
thinking
have
that
gone through
that
even
gets
if they
you.
went third, but yeah.
I forget that gets you in.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they have. I mean, they got
Good job.
crushed by FlyQuest in the final, but hey,
Yeah,
they
but
managed to beat
they
everyone
got there.
else.
So yeah,
Yeah, no,
good job.
I've watched them play Counter Strike. It's not beautiful, but it should be good enough to give them a chance here.
Yeah, but that's a stacked group. I could have put basically everyone here except for Canada. I definitely could have put in the playoffs if they were in any other group, but now they're all in the same group, so
Yeah, it's gonna be rough.
it's gonna be fun. I do hope we get decent coverage of this event, like both the male and female. We have good talent here. We have Paladin and Neokai on the men's side as the only commentators. So I'm assuming there's gonna be games where we just have no commentary or maybe even no stream whatsoever. But oh, actually, yeah, that's gonna suck. Fuck. All right. Yeah, on the women's side, we have Lucy Luz and B Dog, which is also very good. So they have good talent. I just hope we get good coverage and not a lot of tech issues and just like a nice, fun production, which could make it enjoyable to watch this event. Because the games are gonna be like some of the games are gonna be really good for sure. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
I hope we get good coverage of this.
yeah. Looking forward to it. So yeah, IESF didn't give it a double swing, but we gave it a bit of a preview here. So especially hoping we get some good games in the playoffs because some of these groups are going to eliminate some decent teams, but we'll see how our picks do. Like, let's see how these dark horses we've selected, these big favorites we've touted up, how they actually end up performing. All right, that brings us to the eternal shuffle. That's right. Even in a week where basically nothing happened, everyone's just gearing up for the major, there's been a couple changes, and those changes are huge. I'm joking. Parivision have changed coach. Now, doing that as they go into the major, RMR, bit of a risk in my eyes. I like Dastan, as in I like that he has a very systematic style that he's been able to develop with Jame, and that I think it can work for optimizing weaker teams. I'm not sure that's the style he should bring to this team, but at least he has a lot of experience. He's been to the biggest events. He's been to the top of the top. An upgrade, probably in terms of the veteranship. Let's see how it works for them, because I think this is a huge risk to take. So close to the RMR making that change. Unless it's a logistical issue and it's forced, I think it's a bit too big a risk to take.
Yeah, it just seems so weird considering you were very like he was the reason you almost dropped out of the RMR. You could have just if you like I think Dustin was maybe even benched at that time. I don't know my timeline exactly, but I think it might have been the case.
I
So
feel like it's been benched
why
for a
did
little while. Yeah.
yeah, like why did you bother? Like why didn't you do this? Yeah. He was definitely out of Virtus Pro by May was last time.
Right.
So why didn't you do this before? Why have you done it now? I assume like yeah. Why would you put yourself at risk and like cause mayhem in the Counter-Strike scene and cause a bunch of Valve employees to rub their like scratch their heads over their own rules? Just you could have made this change before, but yeah, Finn, yeah, fucking cheater, get the fuck out of here. Yeah.
Yeah, there's not much else to say until we start seeing them play, but yeah, the timing just
Yeah.
feels a bit a bit silly. Just a little too late to start making this sort of adjustment. But hey, the second part of our shuffle is a bit weird. It's technically no move, but I guess it is a move because
Yeah,
Jocab is still
I threw
playing
this
with
in
an
here.
IP. Like
I threw this in here
Maxter's.
because it was a bit yeah.
Do you know what's wrong with Maxter? Is it publicly available? Yeah, we know he's sick, but like, do you know what he's sick with? Is it
No, it's not. It's not like a. I don't have a diagnosis, but he put a tweet out about his situation, and I'm just gonna quote him right here, just for the transparency. For a few weeks before the tournament in Finland, so this would have been. No, it wouldn't have been Espoo. He wasn't in Espoo. What's the tournament in Finland? Because he wasn't there. Because he did say during the event as well. So I don't know. Maybe he went to there, but then just didn't play. I guess that might have been the case. Anyway, I'm gonna quote him directly here. Here is what he has said. A few weeks before the tournament in Finland and during the event itself, I was experiencing generally or really poor health. He felt dizzy, had headache, stomach pain, generally felt unwell, had trouble eating, felt weak, lacked energy. Yeah, he wasn't able to participate in Eliza or ThunderPick. He's feeling better, and he wanted to start playing again for a Swedish Cup and the RMR, but the decision from the coaches was to have consistency during the weeks before, so they didn't want to put him in too early. But basically it's the team who has decided that we've been with Jocab for this long. If we put Maxter back in right now, we're just gonna have the same issue we had at the start of Jocab again. So they've basically decided he's gonna be back next year and Jocab is gonna play out the year. But supposedly has recovered. It's not like he doesn't write a diagnosis here. He doesn't write like, "Oh, I had the flu."
right?
Just like he felt generally unwell. Which we haven't known for a while. Before we just knew that like he was on the quote unquote injured list, and that could have meant anything from a broken arm to whatever. Yeah.
Cancer.
So yeah, yeah. Get better. Do get better, Maxter, and I'm not sure what to make of the Joe Cab thing because he hasn't been too hot. I think
Yeah, neither's the entire roster, to be fair, but yeah.
no, but Joe Cab, I see like a couple of big issues there, and Joe Cab he's not exactly putting up the level that he should be. To be frank, neither was Maxter before this.
Mm-hmm.
He had a bit of a slump, but at least with Maxter, we have seen a higher level out of him at this tier of play. On the odd event here or there, he's actually done really well. Joe Keb has just had a really rough go of it with the main team, so I'm not sure. But I do hope he can do a lot better. He's 083 so far in 20
Horrific,
maps.
yes. Horrific.
It's
Honestly,
20 maps, so I'm not
that's a
gonna.
lot of maps. 20 maps. It's a lot of maps.
Yeah, yeah,
He
yeah,
played some Swedish like shitters to farm like as well. Like sorry, it's pretty horrendous.
yeah,
It's just he
yeah.
gets the caveat of so is just NIP in general right now. Like y'all are just
Yeah.
bad. So yeah, his stats are going to look even worse, but he's not playing well.
The Swedish
that's an
Cup
issue.
was very red. He didn't have a single positive map in the Swedish Cup.
Bro played Alliance and couldn't get a positive map. Come on.
He had the odd good map in ThunderPick. They still ended up losing in the group. He kind of activated against Imperial. I'm gonna have to give him that. Like he played a good level on the two maps they won against Imperial, but then they played the next game and they fuck it up. And also he was pretty good in one map against Heroic, but then his team weren't, so they lost. Going 24-18 but still losing 10-13. That's yeah. I don't know. It's the sort of thing where like maybe they made the decision because they've started seeing good stuff out of Prague. Like maybe they've finally hit that point when things start gelling, things start working with Joe Cab. So that like maybe that's why they made the decision, or they're hoping that comes very soon. In the latter case, I think they're kind of fucked in the former case, I think they're doing very well. It's very hard to diagnose what NIP should do. Like if you were giving me
Oh,
like
fuck
next
hell.
NIP right now,
Yeah. It's
it,
really rough. I mean, the ultimate thing I can say if I'm NIP is like, use that time machine you've got hidden away to pretend you didn't let all your best academy talents go fucking everywhere else. Have a
yeah,
roster that looks something a little more like, Linus, Nilo, Adam B,
yeah,
Pick and Orpa, like something like that. You probably have a. I mean, if
mm,
you can keep Wrinkle in this theoretical world. Like, there's a
yeah,
roster that's basically Swedish with Wrinkle that you can make out of their former players. That is kind of nuts. So no, if I'm in IP, obviously, right now I don't know what to make of this because I can't even be sure I have the Orpa I thought I had. Because when I sign Wrinkle, and the eye test is telling me future simple, pretty much, his playstyle is saying absolute god, who's gonna fill the seats for the next 5 years. In terms of if he was like a traditional sports player, like he's got that flashy, aggressive, entertaining style. And then the player I've had has been, well, he's had like 2 good series, and then
no,
he's had a
he had
lot
it
of
like
duds. A
he
lot
had
of
at least
duds.
one good event where Maui Snake was like tweeting that Wrinkle was going to be the best
Yeah,
player in the world
it's
at one
Pro
point.
League, and that's the 2 good series he's played for this team, pretty much.
No, it would have been
No, it's
Blast. It
before
was
Pro
definitely
League. It's even
Blast.
before Pro League. Yeah, sorry, I'm just going through the event history right now. No, because that
No,
Pro
no,
League
no.
was pretty shit.
The one where Maui was going insane. I'm pretty sure it was Blast Groups
Yeah,
because
that's what I'm saying. It's
that was
before
the.
Pro League.
Oh, you mean the second Pro League? Fuck, I was looking at the first one. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah, they
Eh.
beat FaZe 2-0. Here we go. Yeah, it's Blast Premier full groups. And that series he had against FaZe is some of the best AWP play I've ever witnessed, especially on Ancient. If you ever need to watch some great AWPing, watch him play Ancient against FaZe. But after
Mm.
that, I've had flashes. I've had a round or two where he emulates that form. But for the most part, Wrinkle has been inconsistent and for the most part, bad. So I cannot, if I'm NIP, even be sure I have that locked down anymore. Like, I'm not even sure I have my future go-to Hall of Famer on the AWP. Like, he's all of a sudden kind of faded. So I'm in a
Yeah.
very precarious spot if I'm in the NIP management because I've
If if you'll indulge me, I'll just go player for player and see if there's any change you can make post major. So I'm just gonna go through here. Rez, no, you cannot. He has been fairly competent at this point, unless you can,
time out.
unless you,
My limit cannot be fairly competent. I need to make changes. We've been mid for 4 years. Like,
unless let's be realistic here. NIP at this point cannot secure a player who would be a significant upgrade over what Rez is doing right now.
how much is
Cannot.
a Metasport buyout?
I don't think anybody there. Like I think they could be an upgrade. It's also a gamble at this. But if I'm just starting at Rez there because he was the
Do
first
it.
on the list, I don't think you're cutting Rez right now. I don't think that's gonna make the world particularly much better. Let's move on. Missed them. It's been too short. We can't judge Missed them on 20 maps, especially when he hasn't had.
He's especially the one guy where I'm like, okay, fair enough. I'm not too lost on you yet. But
Yeah,
most players, I can make a compelling case for cutting at this point.
Isak. Yes, his T side has been very bad.
Horrendous, yes.
Who the fuck can you put in hard anchor roles and some of the worst T side roles, which is gonna make this team very good?
You can't
One
make
for
the
one.
team very good by just cutting Isaac and just signing one player. You can cut everyone and sign a good team instead, but
Yeah, but that's sort of like I don't want to blow up this team again. We've blown up this team so many times. Anyway, Wrinkle. On a good day, very good. On a bad day, very bad.
yeah, he's had a lot of
Somebody
bad days
said,
though.
somebody
Like,
said, somebody said, put Sunpayas in. There's
yeah,
no guarantee Sunpayas is gonna not have those bad days. Like,
I have a lot more proof that he can have those good days, especially against much higher tiers of competition. Like, I have a lot of
yeah,
backing up
yeah,
my
maybe.
Sampaio gamble.
Finally, Maxter. No,
Has been
like you
abysmal in
can't.
this roster.
Maxter is the guy. Maxter slash Jokab is the spot which I think this team hinges on most because that's the spot where you want to have a performance up there with Rez, maybe even beating Rez. Like you want Rez, Wrinkle, Maxter to be your front three, and you can. Maxter has had a couple of good stuff here, a couple of very bad stuff here, and now he's sort of entered the Faven territory where like he's been a liability due to health issues, which
And
is a
also his
shame.
play. But yeah, He's just been a
Except for the events
liability.
where he
Like,
wasn't.
yeah,
Except for the events where he
right at the
wasn't.
start, he looked fine, and we're like, oh, cool. I can't just then ignore the next 2 months of dog shit and be like, oh, but the start was fine. That start was not 2 months. It was like a week. Like, I can't be happy about it. And you say don't blow it up. Maybe next time don't rebuild straight tofu drag. Like, just build it solid. Like, we keep blowing it
Yeah.
up because it keeps being built wrong and falling
The big
apart.
criticism I'm gonna give is the big same criticism that everybody on in Sweden has been saying. You went international because you thought you couldn't build a competent lineup out of Swedish talent players. You don't sign big international players. They just haven't done that. I guess they did. You can make an argument that Config was at one point a big international player.
He
You
was,
can
yeah.
make an argument that Alexi B was. He was definitely,
Yeah,
but
they all
like
were.
Alexi B is probably even then Config was like Config was definitely at the tail end, and Alexi B didn't really give a fair shot. So I just, now suddenly we're sitting here with you opted not to sign Cadian because you wanted to keep Head Trick, and you instead go with Alex, and then you boot Alex, and you presumably would have had the option to get Cadian as a rifler, considering around the same time he went to Astralis as a rifler. You don't even go for that. That's a like, where are these big name signings? Why are we making like you pound for pound? You could have had a Swedish team which was better than this, a full Swedish team. So it makes no
Easily.
sense. That's the bottom line of this. So yeah. Anyway, Maxter sort of enters the Faven territory where like when he's played, he's not been super good. He's shown flashes, and especially in the past, we've seen flashes. He's also been out due to illness, so like there's a smaller amount of events and maps where you can judge him on. His replacement has been quite bad,
Abysmal, yeah.
but I still kind of want to give him another 3 months to see if he can turn it around once everything is fine and dandy. So that's going to be very difficult for them, and I think NIP are kind of screwed going into the next year because they won't have invites. They're gonna have to go through qualifiers. They're gonna have to play a lot of online shit. And yeah, I think honestly, if they get the opportunity to pick up a higher ranked squad or the core of a higher ranked squad just to inherit that ranking, I think they might want to do it. Like if they get the chance to like pull the trigger on signing 3 out of 5 from Sangle after the major,
So
go
many
right the fuck
orgs need
ahead.
to do that. So, like, I'm just going to tangent now onto Sangul because we've been on
Yeah,
this point for a while, but I don't care.
yeah,
This is how episodes that should be 45 minutes last 2 hours. But the
yeah.
Sangul idea, if you can, as NIB, for somehow you manage to outbid, because I'm assuming people should be and will be bidding. If you can outbid people on like a jumpy Linus, because I want the duo, then preferably if you're Swedish, you want Youngster. He's not my favorite player on the team, but I do think
My
he's
favorite player.
good enough. I know he's your favorite, but he's good enough at his roles where I don't hate the signing. And then I'd want Xfloud, I want Jota. Assuming we're taking Youngster and we only want to sign 3, just take. I'd say just take Jota, but either case, I'm not too mad. Especially seeing as they'd be still working with Jumpy, who made both of them work in a really like optimized system, kind of like to allow them to play the way they want to play and play their best Counter Strike. So if you can keep Wrinkle, keep Rez, replace the rest of them with that trio. Again, I'm still not sold that I'm going to get magically a good Rez again. I'm still not. Unfortunately, I can't be convinced by my eye test of Wrinkle just because of how many bad games I've had. But at least then I have a call where I go, well, this is money. Like, this trio is money. Like, I've got a caller for the future, a coach who knows how to work with him. I've got I've got an Isaac replacement straight up, whatever. But this is just being done to get the ranking. And I've got myself a rifler who not only plays anchor spots, but is so dynamic in his playmaking that he can be a star asset. I've got something to talk about again. And, having stolen that ranking position, I can now get into events. So there's a way, I guess, with the Sangul takeover. But I think, like, if this team does even the slightest bit of good at the RMRs, like make it through the RMRs, make it to the opening stage and go 2-3, the bidding war that should be going on to get a trio of those players. Basically, there's going to be a bidding war to basically get everyone but Youngster and Samey, I think. And Youngster, if you want to make a you know, a ranking steal kind of is one of the players you'd go for. So for everyone
Yeah.
except Samey, I think there'll be a fucking price to pay. And no offense, Samey, love you long time, but it's just not been that. Like, it's just not been that, has it? These riflers have been monstrous. The team has played super well under Linus and Yumpy. It has to happen. So no, that'd be the move. You're correct. It's just I don't think it'd be that viable in terms of price.
No, I think at this point NIP have fucked themselves where like even if they wanted to make a move like that, they might want to make a move like that. Even if they do, they've fucked their reputation so much that there's always going to be a better candidate. There's always going to be
Sure.
the liquid to KDN, and there's always going to be, whoever the fuck. Yes, FaZe is probably going to be bidding on a lot of the players that NIP wants. G2 is probably going to be bidding on a lot of the players that NIP might want after the major.
Yeah.
Um, like maybe Mouse would even be bidding if you go. Mouse might even be looking at the players who NIP want to get after the major when they inevitably make some changes.
Yep.
Um, you know, it's going to be hard, and at that point you are going to end up with, I'm just going to pull one out of the bunch, you are going to end up with having to sign so let me just pull one out of the pile of lower ranked teams than NIP. You're going to have to look at Fiku, I guess. You're going to have to look at Nodios, and that's not exactly inspiring signings. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's I think they have just fucked themselves. I think they might just want to go back to Sweden. Honestly, go back to Sweden. Johnny Speeds might get blown up. You have good opportunities there. Might if you want to go for Draken, fucking go for Draken. Like you can probably put together a team which can be solid for 9 months and just sort of sit there, do some stuff, build up your reputation, and then be like, for a year, we're just going to be a good Swedish team. And we're going to try to be the best. We're going to try to be better than Metasport. We're going to try to be like, if we can't have Metasport, let's try to be better than Metasport. Like, better than Eyeballers, better than Alliance, better than Godsent, all of these, like firmly at the top. Then you go back and start making international stuff. Because then maybe there's a fucking Kerrigan on the way at that point. Maybe there's a Kerrigan you can get, or a Snappy you can get, or a Kixan you can get, or whatever the fuck, down the line, whatever happens. And then maybe you have that reputation where you can go, look what we did. We actually turned the ship around. And we can promise you a good budget. We can promise you a good project. This is just something I'm theorizing for like ahead of 2026.
Sure. Yeah.
That's probably what you should. That's probably, honestly, if I'm going to be entirely honest, that's probably what you should have done last year when you were booting everybody anyway. You could have probably kept, like, maybe you could have even kept
Right.
Hampus and Brollan and just try to make something Swedish and build your reputation up and then start going back to getting the big name players because you're not there now. Like, you're just not there. I just think everybody would say no to NIP because there would always be a better option. And even if there isn't a better option, there's one you would prefer because you just know that NIP is a lost cause at this point. So yeah, I just think, yeah, that's sort of where we are. So yeah, that was a long tangent. We actually have one more shuffle thing to go through.
We do.
Uh, uh
So yeah, let's do it. So finally, Imperial Valkyries have added Bubble as a coach. They've changed coach from Husky, or however that's pronounced, to
Yep.
Bubble. Bit of a weird one, obviously. Bubble making his transition to women's Counter-Strike. Bubble in the past, as an IGL, I mean, he's got about 1 billion maps on HLTV, having led
Yep.
Bulgarian rosters for more than a decade, I think. But now as a coach, you know, he coached Pera briefly, who then were Chang. But now he's coaching Imperial FE. I don't know, as an IGL, there was a certain style that his teams relied upon that got a bit weird at times. Like it was almost like he pioneered like his Bulgarian style is what I called it, where there's like there are times that they're the only team I'll see do this. They'll be like, you know what, 4 rounds in a row, we're just going to exec A from spawn, pretty much, on Mirage, for example. And you're like, this is so odd. And they'll be like, the one thing that'll change will be like, oh, we'll wait 30 seconds, have one guy checking literally the spawn flank, and then we'll just throw the exec and go. And you're like, this was like, I'm talking 2022 he was doing this. We're not talking 2015. Like teams playing the Bulgarian style would sort of run these sorts of really strange methods on T side, but it kind of worked for them. And that was the most confusing part of it all. But no, an incredibly experienced IGL who briefly coached, but now taking over the lead of one of, if not the most terrifying women's roster, Tori, 23, Kat, Anna, and Zaz. Oh, Zaz who switched up flags. I didn't notice that. Yeah, it's it's going to be interesting because he's kind of walked into the easiest job in women's Counter-Strike in theory because he's already got the 5-time world champion core, you know?
Yeah.
What's he got to do? Make them win it for a 6th time in a row. Damn, dude. Like, you really gave yourself a lot of work here. It's like walking into like the Galacticos Real Madrid and being like, oh, right, how do I kick ball in goal, guys? Just keep it up.
Yeah.
There's still definitely work to do, but it's at least he's got himself the easiest possible version of that job.
Yeah. I don't like Bubble. It's a story for another time, which I think you have told in the past. But yeah, I just don't like him. I think his reputation is actually somewhat credible. The reputation that some might have about him and the players he's played with in the past. Center of the Victory Zigzag scandal, as some of you might remember. But fucking go for it. Yeah, let's see what happens. Like you say, it's not really. I've never really considered the coach of Imperial FE. I'm sure like Husky has done a lot for them. It's just I've never really thought. Honestly, I've never really thought too much about them. I'm sure they did a good job. It's just not, you know. I just don't think like you say, it's the easiest job in esports. I didn't see a significant difference in the team when they swapped from JTR to Husky, neither of whom are
Right.
particularly notable. Like neither JTR or Husky had much of a resume before. JTR is like fucking 2 years younger than me, Jesus Christ. And then like Husky, yeah, good job, but like it's not hugely inspiring of a resume prior to this. So you end up with this in a lot of different impact teams, and it's actually somewhat to the credit of the league and its existence is that you can have relatively non-notable coaches who would go for these jobs early on in the impact league's history and then end up actually having bigger jobs later on. I think a lot of even those who don't find big success, but I think like Independent, who was with Guild, he's now working with Fnatic in some sense. I think he's an assistant coach or such.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a good stepping stone for
Anyway,
people. Yeah.
good stepping stone. Just Bubble.
Yeah, you've got your
I know.
thoughts. We might have a time for that tangent, but we're not going to go into it.
It might be a behind the scenes topic next week or something.
Sure. But let's
Yeah.
get ourselves onto the prospects of the week. More positive. I'm going to kick this one off because I figured it out. Finally, I spent the entire show with the list of players I could pick from, and I've decided to actually bend the rules and go for a player because there was so little low-level Counter-Strike this week. It's like I could pick Svi. We just picked him. I could go for Adam B. I just picked Nilo, and Adam B just played. We just talked all this good stuff about Metasport already, so I'm going to pick Soulfly, who I was kind of a fan of on the old Sango roster he was a part of. I thought he played well, and I thought kind of got hard done by, not necessarily by them, but just by the scene in general when he couldn't really find a proper roster for a long time. He's on the Witchers. I'm like, I get it's a team, but like I want to see him back on a tier 2 contender again. And so Fireflux isn't a crazy roster. Like we talked about it when it got assembled. We're kind of like Skrunk, Banjo, Paz, Sensei, bruh. Soulfly's good though. That was sort of the conversation. And look, he's being hyper aggressive as you'd expect. He's got a surprisingly large amount of clutches on CT side in this brief stint. Like his clutch points per round is pretty high. But overall, he's going to be the guy bashing heads in on the way in, just taking opening duels a lot of the time on CT side as well. Crazy firepower. He's been immense for Fireflux since signing. So I thought I'd go a bit controversial, a bit like around the rules. Pick a guy who's 20, who's had finally a re-emergence into relevance for the scene. It's not a huge event they played. It's the win line in season, whatever the hell it was called. But they beat a Russian mix I've never heard of. They beat Copenhagen Wolves. They've taken 2 losses to 9 Pandas, where he played fairly well, but then also beaten Arc Red. So, yeah, they're not the winningest team right now, but at least it's nice to see Soulfly back in the conversation, back playing matches, and hopefully can drag this team forward, because, yeah, firepower doesn't go very deep in this squad. But at least we've got that one guy.
Yeah, this guy is very much a bit of a what if, I think. I would love to, because he did briefly play with Lean as a youngster. I would love to, or Fuzi as well for a long time. I'd love to know why it kind of didn't really work out after that single time, because he was looking very competent. I think out of everybody who was a teammate of his, it was like, it was QB, it was Panix, it was Major. Sorry, Major was very brief. It was Fuzi. Um, yeah, Fuzi and Corey obviously ended up moving to China after that. Um, he had Panix as a teammate for a while. He had QB for a long time. And it's sort of like out of sorry. After that time, I probably would have picked like Soulfly to be the guy to find a new team to do something good. And it was literally everybody else except for him who found something, another gig after that, because QB would at that point he would move on to Fnatic briefly. Fuzi obviously moved on to China and then to Wildcard. Corey as well went to China. Yeah, it's like it's a bit weird that he is the one guy who sort of missed out. So
Mm.
um yeah, whatever the case may be, he's found his way onto this Fire Flux team, which is also competent, I think. Like it's also like
Well, they've
it's
barely
sort of
started, but yeah, there's something to it so far.
yeah, we haven't seen them yet too much, but I mean pound for pound, if I'm just gonna go through this, like you already mentioned the names, but Sensei, Paz, and Skunk, that's obviously that sort of Sangal heritage, I would have said, like that his time from Sangal, that's probably what's doing it. He would have played with all of those guys on Sangal. And then Banjo, who also not necessarily like a big what if, but he's one of those guys who we saw him on Fnatic Rising, and we
Yeah, he
were
looked
like,
decent there. Like he's decent on Fnatic
yeah,
Rising.
briefly stepped into the main team as well for a LAN event, which I think they won, didn't they?
I do not
Wasn't
remember.
he? Wasn't he there for Espu when Fnatic won Espu?
2023, he was playing on
Yeah,
Havu.
it would have been 2022 then when he was on. Because I'm fairly sure they had to throw somebody in. It might have been Pepsor they threw in, but I
Yeah,
think
because
it
I
was
think it's
Banjo as well.
Pepsol, because Banjo doesn't have 2 LAN achievements. He has one, and that's SP 2023,
Uh,
where he finished top 4 with Havu after they, got
Also
some
a big
BO1
achievement.
wins. Oh, they won 2 BO1s,
Uh,
but yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, but he
oh
was
no,
on
they beat
Habu
Game
Elite.
Legion at BO3. Never mind, they did beat Game Legion at BO3. The oh so powerful Snacks Kios iteration.
Yeah. Not necessarily a big what if as big as Soulfly, but like good player. Very good player. And like if they can find this if they can make this team work really well, that's gonna be good for both of them. And especially Soulfly, who's the topic of this conversation, is
Yeah,
doing his best
he's
to make that happen
far and
right now,
away
at
the
least.
best fragger on the team right now. It's not even
Yeah.
close.
I have a little bit of faith in this team because I know that we've seen this team for a good while now. Like those of us who do scour Liquipedia occasionally to find these like outsider rosters that nobody would have noticed otherwise, has seen this mix for a couple of months before they actually got announced for Fireflux, playing various qualifiers and cups or whatever. I don't know how they did, but they definitely showed up. And something that's when it comes to like random teams that sort of just get assembled and then get signed, a lot of the time they do get assembled. Like an org just sort of comes to like an IGL puts together 2 other players and then starts looking for orgs. They find an org, and then only after that point they find the remaining 2 players. In
Yeah.
this case, I would say that like well they've stuck together for a few months. That's already better than a lot of these this sort of team does. So let's see what they do. Let's see what happens. Um,
Yeah, fun to follow. I just hope.
yeah. Good pick. I have gone for a Swede, and I'm just gonna say this. I love Robin. I think Robin is a not he's a decent player. He's a very cool guy. Like I think he's a very nice guy. And I think he's also he doesn't hold back in any of his social media conversations, and I like that about him.
Yeah.
But Alliance cutting him has, if nothing else, it's fixed one issue with Alliance, and that has been Ovid, who has been very inconsistent with Robin. I don't know if Twist knows something about how to play him that Robin doesn't. Sort of why I bring him up. But ever since Robin left, Ovid has been, I won't say nuclear. Like he hasn't been. It depends week to week.
We
Like
we wanted
occasionally
him
he
to
will have like
be, and he was for like the first week, sort of, and like we got kind of
he was like
excited.
135. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Yeah,
it kind of sort of sloped off, but no,
yeah.
he's still playing
His
much better than he
average is
used
down
to.
to Yeah, his average is down to 112, but he's absolutely destroying Sweden because they did have 2 LAN games where he fucking destroyed. Versus Eyeballers, that's a 13-9 on Ancient. He went 34-15 to win that map. And then also versus NIP, that's a 22-16 in a 10-13 loss, so that's good. Also in the Elitserien, the National League playoffs, which were happening just before this, he also went huge 24-13, 26-13, 24-11. Big week, big week. It's Swedish competition, but that's also for this team, that's competition which really counts, of course.
Yeah.
And he's also done very well against the international competitions in the week before. Or in the weeks before. So yeah, something has changed. They still have other issues. Like I'm not
Oh,
too bullish on Alliance just yet. Because they still sort of need to do something about Bodemaster. I think Upe has, as much as I also think he has flashes of being a good player, those haven't really come through on Alliance in particular.
yeah.
But Arvid is a talent at this point. I think he's finally showing to be that sort of talented player that he was supposed to be, and he's starting to show that, and that's very nice. I do love that.
Yeah, I'm happy to see another good sort of time span for this guy. It's one of those many like sort of conversations I have to have about Swedish scene when I'm like, oh, they like this guy. I come along and watch him, and I think y'all are just shut up. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? But finally, he's put a lot more uh, back up to it. He's put some results on the table, some matches that I can actually point to where he's played well. So I'm glad about that. So no, yeah, not just empty talk about Swedish players. It's a real another one to add to the list of players who are actually solid. On always riflers though, I've noticed. We're still waiting for another AWPer. But yeah, all the best Sweden. But this guy's at least a good addition to the list of players you can waste.
Yeah.
All right, that's going to be the show. We predicted an hour. It's 90 minutes. As always, got very distracted at various moments.
It was NIP, wasn't it? Yeah, it was
Yeah, of
just NIP.
course. Part of it, yeah. But all right. If you enjoyed, leave a like. If you disagreed with us, leave a comment. We always appreciate the hatred, the feedback, and sometimes the love, but we find the hate very funny. Sub if you want to see more content. Become a member if you want to support the channel and get bonus content and rights. So yeah, that's all for this one. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.